Hey there. My name is Jordan. I'm 38 years old, and I come from Texas. This isn't the kind of story you hear every day. It's the kind that brews in silence, stirs in the shadows of family secrets, and eventually spills over not for vengeance, but because the truth needs light. This is the story of how I was raised in a home where I was never fully accepted by a man I thought was my father, and how I carried the weight of that truth until it broke me. But I rebuilt. I found peace. And now, I get to decide how the story ends. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our weekly stories. And if you enjoy our content, hit that like button to show some love and support the effort we put in every video. But knowing something deep down and admitting it to yourself, those are two different things. I clung to what little stability I had, and for me, that was my mom. She was soft and strong at the same time. The kind of woman who could work 2 jobs, come home exhausted, and still make sure I had dinner before bed. She never let me go to sleep feeling unloved, even if the world or our house tried to tell me otherwise. Still, I couldn't ignore the way my stepfather looked at me sometimes. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even hatred. It was indifference. Like I wasn't his. Like I didn't matter the way his other kids did. Like he was doing me a favor just by letting me exist in his house. And maybe he was. Maybe that's how he saw it. I remember once, I was about 10 years old, and it was Christmas morning. My siblings were tearing open their gifts, toys flying, wrapping paper everywhere. Laughter, joy, all the things you imagine when you think of a holiday. I waited patiently, like always. When my turn came, I got a box of socks. Nothing wrong with socks, right? Except they were used. Worn. Clearly not new. Everyone else got game consoles, Barbie dolls, bicycles. I got hand-me-down socks stuffed in a department store bag. I looked at my mom, and she smiled at me with tears in her eyes, not out of happiness, but guilt. I think that was the moment something inside me cracked. Not all the way, not yet, but enough to let in a little cold. She made up for it the next day. Found an excuse to take me into town, just the two of us. She bought me a little science kit from a drugstore, nothing fancy, just a cheap set with test tubes and baking soda. But the way she handed it to me, the way she said, "You're going to build something amazing one day, Jordan," it meant more than any PlayStation ever could. She always saw something in me, something no one else bothered to look for, but the older I got, the harder it was to pretend. I couldn't help but notice how my stepdad's affection didn't include me. He played catch with my brothers. He took my sister to dance recitals. With me? He kept a distance. Always, sometimes I'd catch him staring when he thought I wasn't looking, like he was trying to figure me out, trying to decide if I was worth the trouble. Maybe in his mind, I was a reminder of a decision my mother made before him. A mistake he inherited. A truth they never spoke about. I didn't know what to call it then. But now? Now I understand it. I was the secret they both tried to fold into the family, hoping no one would notice, but kids notice. And even when they can't explain it, they carry it. I carried it. I carried it in the way I always offered to do more around the house, hoping it would earn me some kind of approval. I carried it in the way I stayed quiet when things felt unfair, thinking silence would protect me. I carried it in every forced smile, every missed birthday gift, every time I overheard him call me her son instead of his, and the weight only grew heavier as I got older. This was the beginning, the quiet lie that shaped everything else. Grief does strange things to a person. At 15, I didn't know how to process the depth of what I'd lost. I just knew the house felt colder. Quieter. Like the warmth my mother brought into every room had vanished, and no one knew how to fill the space she left behind. People always say time heals. But they don't talk about the time in between, the days that drag by in silence, the nights when you cry into your pillow so no one hears, the aching feeling that the world kept moving and left you behind. My siblings tried to go back to normal. I don't blame them. They were kids too, just trying to survive the only way they knew how. But I couldn't pretend. Not when every corner of that house reminded me of her, the humming in the kitchen while she cooked, the smell of her perfume when she tucked me in, the soft sound of her slippers moving through the hallway late at night. Now, all of it was gone. My stepfather, he handled it the way he handled everything. Quiet. Practical. Efficient. He made the arrangements, stood at the funeral with a blank face, and went back to work the next day. There was no moment of vulnerability. No words of comfort. Not even a hug, he barely looked at me. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. After the funeral, there was a day, maybe a week later, where I found an old photo of my mother and me tucked in the back of a kitchen drawer. It was one of the only pictures where she held just me. I must have been 2 or 3. Her smile was wide, her arms wrapped around me like I was her whole world. I stared at that photo for hours. I wanted to crawl into that moment and stay there forever, where it was just her and me. Before all the silence, before all the pretending, I kept that photo in my wallet for years. School became my escape. I threw myself into my studies, partly because I wanted a future, and partly because it kept me busy. The teachers noticed. One of them, Mrs. White, pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "You're one of the brightest kids I've seen in years. Don't let that light go out, Jordan." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until she said it. At home, the chores doubled. With Mom gone, there was a gap, and I was expected to fill it. Cook, clean, look after the younger ones. My stepdad never said it outright, but it was clear, I wasn't just the help. I was the replacement, but no one could replace her, and no matter how many dinners I made, or lawns I mowed, or clothes I folded, I stayed invisible in his eyes. I wasn't his son, I was just the boy left behind. The weight of the truth didn't crush me, it clarified me. For the first time, everything lined up. The cold stares, the extra chores, the lack of affection, it wasn't just in my head. I was different. I wasn't his. And somewhere deep down, he'd always known. But now that I knew, I couldn't unknow it. Aunt Sheila sat beside me as I wept that night, her hand resting gently on my back. She didn't try to stop the tears. She just let me release years of confusion, frustration, and loneliness. When I finally calmed down, she said something I'll never forget: "Your mother loved you fiercely. You were her firstborn, Jordan. Her anchor. She didn't tell you the truth because she thought protecting you meant keeping things quiet. But baby, that silence cost you." She was right. It did. I went back to my dorm room feeling like a stranger in my own skin. Who was my real father? Where was he? Did he even know I existed? 1,000 questions swirled in my mind. And none of them had answers. But there was one thing I was sure of now: I had spent my whole life trying to earn a man's love who never considered me his son. That chase was over. Still, I stayed focused. My mother's dream was for me to graduate, and I wasn't going to let that slip. Even after learning the truth, I poured myself into my engineering studies with a new kind of resolve, not because I wanted approval anymore, but because I wanted freedom. That truth gave me power. Over time, I stopped blaming myself. I stopped thinking I had to prove anything to anybody. The past couldn't be undone, but I could control what came next. I told Aunt Sheila not to tell my stepfather that I knew. What would be the point? I didn't need a confrontation. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. Quiet peace. The kind I hadn't known since my mother passed, but I did start pulling back. I called home less. I visited even less than that. And when I did go, it was for my siblings, my real siblings, the ones who had the same blood from our mother and shared my childhood. Even if their skin was different, they were the only pieces of that house I still loved. Every time I saw my stepfather, I saw a man who had tolerated me, not raised me. And now, knowing the truth, I stopped hoping for him to ever be more than that. I didn't hate him. I just didn't need anything from him anymore. The silence he gave me all those years? I finally gave it back. I should have seen it coming. The moment he sat us down at the kitchen table with that stiff, uncomfortable smile on his face, I knew it wasn't going to be good news, not for me. Anyway, he said her name was Linda. Said she was a good woman, and that she had 3 great kids. Said it was time for a fresh start. Fresh start? For who? I sat there trying to mask the knot forming in my stomach. I wasn't angry right away, just displaced. I had already spent years in that house trying to prove I belonged. And now, with one announcement, he was bringing in 3 more strangers, rewriting the rules all over again. My mother's photos were still on the mantel. Her favorite chair still sat by the window, untouched. But somehow, we were all supposed to pretend she'd never existed. Just move on, I tried. God knows I tried. I smiled through dinners. I made small talk. I stayed out of the way. But deep inside, resentment brewed like a storm, and one night, it all came out. I pulled him aside after dinner, asked to speak with him privately. I told him honestly, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Like everything was changing too fast, like I hadn't even had the chance to grieve properly before he was filling the house with new names, new routines, new loyalties. He didn't even let me finish. What gives you the right to question my decisions? He barked. This is my house. And then, before I could say another word, he hit me, not just once, not a moment of anger he'd later apologize for. No. This was a deliberate, drawn-out beating. As if he'd been waiting for an excuse all this time. As if I was finally out of line enough for him to release what he'd been holding back for years. When it was over, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just walked to my room, packed a small duffel bag, and left. No goodbye, no looking back. I had about $40 in my wallet. Just enough for a bus ticket to the city. I called my college roommate, Terrence, who didn't hesitate to say, "Come through, man. You got space on my couch." That couch became my haven. I juggled 3 part-time jobs and applied for every scholarship I could find. I slept in libraries, skipped meals, and studied harder than I ever had in my life. I told myself every night, "You're not going back. You're not going to be that man's punching bag again," and I didn't. I finished my degree in electrical engineering with honors. Got a real job. Rented my first apartment. Built something from the ground up, but no matter how far I climbed, I carried the memory of that night, not because it broke me, but because it woke me up. After college, life finally started to feel like mine. I landed a position at a mid-sized engineering firm downtown, nothing glamorous, but honest work with a decent paycheck. My first office was a cramped corner with a flickering light and a computer from the Stone Age, but I didn't care. I had a keycard with my name on it, a business email, and a manager who treated me with respect. That was more than I ever got back home. Every morning, I woke up in my own apartment, a 1-bedroom on the edge of town with peeling paint and noisy neighbors, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. I didn't know anyone anything. There was no voice shouting down the hall. No tension over dinner. No walking on eggshells. Just me, my ambition, and a future I was finally shaping with my own 2 hands. I never called him. Never wrote. Never visited. I didn't hate him, I just had nothing left to say. But he tried once. Around my 2nd year at the firm, I got a message from my younger brother, Isaiah, one of the 3 siblings I shared a mother with. He said Dad had asked if I'd come home for the holidays. Wanted the whole family together. Apparently, I didn't even have to think about it. I told Isaiah, "Nah. I'm good." That was it. The door closed a little tighter that day. In the years that followed, I made strides. Got promoted. Picked up contract work on the side. Took some courses in finance and learned how to make my money grow. I wasn't rich, but I was smart. I invested modestly, lived below my means, and made sure I had options. And when my siblings needed help, the ones who mattered, I was there. When Isaiah couldn't make rent after college, I sent him the difference. When my sister Monique's car broke down on the way to a job interview, I paid the mechanic directly. No questions asked. We were bonded by blood and by survival. We had grown up in the same war zone, not of bombs and bullets, but of silence and neglect. And that made us family in a way that paperwork never could. As for my stepdad's new life, I watched from afar as it unfolded, through whispers, secondhand stories, and social media glimpses. He had remarried again. Had 2 more kids. Tried to play the happy family role all over, but this time, things were different. He was retired. His income was limited. The responsibilities piled up. And when it came time to send his new kids to school, suddenly he remembered me. Funny how memory works when money's involved. He sent people, family, mutual friends, asking me to help out. I listened. I nodded. And then I told them what I'd been telling myself for years: I'm not angry. I'm just done. Life has a strange way of circling back. Now I'm 38. Stable. Independent. I own my home. I've got investments. I even mentor young engineers coming up in the field, kids who remind me of who I used to be: hungry, lost, and just trying to make something out of nothing. And then, out of the blue, the past comes knocking. It started subtly. A message from a cousin I hadn't heard from in years. Hey Jordan, Uncle Ray's asking about you. Then it became a wave. One of my old neighbors, a friend of the family, even my own siblings came forward. He's struggling. They'd say, he just wants to talk. His new kids are about to graduate. He's trying to get them into college. College. The very thing he threatened to take from me when I stood up for myself. When I refused to pretend that his new marriage and new family didn't feel like an erasure of the one I'd already lost. The thing I fought for on my own, sleeping on couches and skipping meals and studying through exhaustion just to make it. And now, this man, who hadn't called, hadn't written, hadn't apologized, wanted help. I won't lie. Part of me wanted to laugh, not because I enjoy watching anyone struggle. I don't. But because this was the same man who once treated me like an obligation. A reminder. Maybe even a mistake. He never offered me fatherhood, only structure in silence. He provided what he had to. And even that had a limit. The moment I stepped out of line, the support stopped. His hands turned violent, and his wallet turned cold. Now he's reaching out because his second chance at family is in trouble. His other kids, the ones he raised with love, I assumed need what I once needed, but I'm not stepping in. Not because I hold a grudge, but because I've learned something he never did. You can't neglect people and expect loyalty when it's convenient. I help my siblings. The ones who shared my pain. The ones who stood shoulder to shoulder with me as we buried our mother and navigated a world that didn't care. They have me for life, but him? That connection is gone. It's not revenge. It's clarity. Boundaries are a form of love for yourself. And I love myself enough now to say no, even when others might think I should say yes. Especially then. So, when the next person came to me with another plea on his behalf, I kept it simple. I wish him well. But I'm not the one he should be asking. The table turned, yes. But I'm not interested in sitting down at it again. That part of my life is over. I built my own table now, and only the people who showed up when I had nothing get a seat. People love talking about forgiveness. They toss the word around like it's a cure-all. Like it's the magic spell that's supposed to make pain vanish and relationships heal. I hear it a lot, especially when I tell my story. Jordan, don't you think you're being a little harsh? He raised you, didn't he? Maybe he didn't know how to show love. Isn't forgiveness important? And you know what? They're not wrong. Not completely. Forgiveness is important. But what most people don't understand is that forgiveness isn't the same thing as access. It's not a free pass back into my life. It doesn't mean that because I've let go of the rage, I'm ready to play pretend and sit at his table like nothing ever happened. See, forgiveness, real forgiveness, is something I gave myself. Not him. I forgive him for being human. For being flawed. For being a man caught in a complicated situation, married to a woman carrying someone else's child. I forgive him for the discomfort, for the distance, and even for the moments he failed to act like a father. I understand that people break under pressure. That sometimes they show love in broken ways, or not at all, but I won't lie to myself. I won't rewrite history to make other people comfortable, because the truth is, he wasn't a father to me. Not in the ways that mattered. He never hugged me just because. Never told me he was proud of me. Never protected me from the loneliness that came from being different inside my own home. He disciplined me, sure. Paid for school, yes. But love? Belonging? Safety, I got that from my mother. And when she died, it went with her. What hurts the most isn't the beatings, or the rejection, or even the cold indifference. It's the fact that, for years, I believed it was my fault. That I must have done something wrong. That if I just worked harder, behaved better, maybe then he'd look at me the way he looked at the others, but that day never came. And now, when people urge me to reconnect, to rebuild, I have to remind them I'm not holding a grudge. I'm holding the truth. The truth is, some scars never fully fade. Some relationships are not meant to be salvaged, no matter how polite society wants us to be about it. And sometimes, healing means keeping distance, not closing gaps. So no, I'm not bitter. I've built a good life. I've found peace. I've let go of blame, but I still hurt, not because I haven't forgiven, but because I finally stopped pretending. And that honesty, that's the real healing. Today, I live a life I never imagined I'd have. I own a modest 3-bedroom house just outside of Houston. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. There's a small garden out front, a porch where I sip coffee on quiet mornings, and a wall covered in framed photos of the people who matter. My siblings. My late mother. A few close friends who became family over the years. Peace lives here now. Every day, I go to work not just as an engineer, but as a mentor. I make it a point to reach out to young black and brown students entering the field, because I know how isolating it can be to sit in a lecture hall or boardroom where no one looks like you, sounds like you, or understands where you came from. Some of the kids I mentor remind me of myself at 18, wide-eyed, smart, but unsure of where they fit in. I tell them my story. Not the polished version, but the real one. I talk about growing up in a house where love had limits. About feeling invisible. About fighting to survive and succeed without the support most kids take for granted, and I always tell them this: you are not a mistake. You are not broken. And you have the right to build a life that feels like yours. That's why I speak at high schools, too. I show up in worn-out sneakers and a button-up shirt, and I look kids in the eye and let them know that their circumstances don't define them. I talk to the ones who sit in the back, arms folded, trying not to be seen. Because I was that kid. And I know how far just one voice of belief can go. I still grieve, though. Quietly. On my mother's birthday, I light a candle. Sit in silence. Reflect. Sometimes I play her favorite songs and let the memories wash over me like waves. I still visit her grave once a year, always on the anniversary of her passing. I bring fresh flowers, kneel in the dirt, and talk to her like she never left. I tell her about the promotions, the students I've mentored, the neighborhoods I've spoken in. I tell her about Isaiah and Monique, how they're doing well. How we've made it. And how her love, even in death, still holds us together. I know she's proud. I can feel it in the small wins. The warmth in my chest when a student tells me they got into college. The way I've learned to stand tall, even when the world tries to shrink me. The way I no longer carry shame, because what she gave me, that fierce, unwavering love, carried me farther than any inheritance, title, or apology ever could. And who I am today, I'm living proof that pain doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning. Some nights, when the house is quiet and the world slows down, I lie awake and wonder, what kind of father would I be? I don't have children yet. Maybe I will someday, maybe I won't. But if I do, I already know one thing: I'll love them loudly. No guessing. No silence. No confusion about where they stand in my heart. I'll show up. For every scraped knee, every school project, every late night fear they're brave enough to whisper. And I'll protect their sense of belonging like it's sacred. Because it is. I won't raise them with shadows hanging in the corners of the room. I won't treat love like it's earned through chores or silence or survival. I'll never make one child feel like they were an inconvenience, a mistake, or something to tolerate, because I know what that pain feels like. I know how it makes you question your worth, even in moments of success. How it makes love feel conditional. How it can shape the way you see yourself long after you leave the place it came from, and I refuse to pass that down. The legacy I choose isn't built on bitterness or blame. It's built on truth. On healing. On deciding that what I came from doesn't get to dictate what I leave behind. If I ever have a son or daughter, I'll tell them the truth. About where I came from. About what I overcame. But more importantly, I'll show them, through presence, through patience, through love that doesn't keep score, what it means to be chosen. Every single day, that's the cycle I'll break, that's the legacy I'll build. This is my story, not just of pain, but of becoming, a boy once overlooked, now a man who stands tall in his truth. If you're listening, and you've ever felt like the outsider, the afterthought, the one who didn't belong, know this: you are enough. Your beginnings don't define your ending. You have the power to rewrite the narrative, to heal, to rise, to love louder than the silence that tried to shape you. Thank you for walking this journey with me, and remember, your story isn't over. It's just getting started. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more exciting family revenge stories.